Hello, and welcome to Saving Grace Education. In this history lesson on World War II, we'll be looking at the role of women. The aim of today's lesson is for you to be able to find out about women's wartime jobs and describe what they entailed in detail. The success criteria for today's lesson include the following statements. I can compare the roles of women and men before World War II. I can say what type of jobs women did during World War II. I can describe key details of women's wartime jobs. I can design my own propaganda poster. Finally, I can explain how the role of women differed before, during, and after the war. The role of women prior to World War II. What do you think life was like before the war broke out in 1939? What do you think the role of women were like? What do you think the role of men were like? And how much do you think in the 1930s differed from life today? Life for most women before the war was quite different from it is today. Typically, most women stayed at home and did not go out to work. Some younger women did go out to work, but if they were married, they had to give up their job. Women were paid less than men, and they were generally only employed to do women's jobs, such as nursing or working as a shop assistant. Men and women's roles were very stereotypical, and even from a young age, boys and girls were brought up quite differently. Lessons in school taught girls how to cook, sew, and look after the home, while boys were taught woodwork and other practical skills to equip them for the workplace. How do you think men and women felt about their roles? When the war started in September 1939, the role of women was said to change. And why do you think this was the case? What do you think would be different, and why? And what might women be required to do? Changing roles. With men called off for active service, there was a great need for women to undertake jobs that the men had previously done. Suddenly, women became more than just homemakers and were given the opportunity to become patriotic heroines. They would contribute significantly to the war effort in a variety of ways. During the war, women were employed in a wide range of jobs. Some became munition factory workers who made weapons. Others joined the armed forces, including the Navy, and Air Force. Many worked as land girls. Some drove buses or trains. Some worked on the canals. They worked as nurses or ambulance drivers. They built ships and worked in other engineering industries. They worked as searchlight operators, and some became air raid wardens. The Women's Voluntary Service also employed women, who assisted with a wide range of duties. At the start of the war, the government relied on women to volunteer for work. However, by late By late 1941, it became necessary to introduce conscription, making working compulsory. Initially, this only applied to single women between the ages of 20 and 30, but late in the war, this was extended to women between the ages of 18 and 50. In 1943, almost 90% of single women and 80% of married women were in employment. Imagine you are a woman living during World War II who has just been given a job. Read your offer of employment letter to see what you will be doing. Then research all about it so that you know what the job involves. Complete the job description activity sheet to describe the details of your job. Now let's have a look at propaganda posters. During the war, propaganda posters were commissioned to encourage thousands of women to volunteer for work. Posters were designed to make working look glamorous and to appeal to women's sense of duty and to their country. Look at each propaganda poster and discuss the questions with your partner. Be ready to feedback your ideas to the rest of the class. For this activity, ask yourself the following questions with regards to the poster. What job is the poster encouraging women to volunteer for? That is to work in air raid precautions as a warden or one of the other listed roles. What features does it use to persuade them? It features a person appealing directly to the reader through the use of a speech bubble. It also shows a line of women already walking along to sign up and to encourage others to follow suit. Let's do this activity again. What job is this poster encouraging women to volunteer for? To work for the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. And what features does it use to persuade them? Capital letters and exclamation marks are used in the slogan to suggest that women would help Britain be victorious in war if they join. The picture used depicts the transformation from a civilian to an employee. The woman shown looks strong, useful, and happy. What job is this poster encouraging women to do volunteer work for? The Women's Land Army. And what features does it use to persuade them? The slogan suggests that the work will be enjoyable and promote good health. It uses an image of a glamorous woman, showing that they wouldn't lose their femininity. For this activity, consider propaganda posters. Now work with your partner to design your own propaganda poster for a woman's wartime job. Remember to clearly show what the job is and use persuasive design features to appeal to the readers. After the war. When the war finished, many women lost their jobs when men returned to the positions they had left. Other jobs, which were specific to the war effort, were simply not necessarily available any longer. For lots of women, going back to the way they were before the war was quite difficult. They had got used to working and leading more independent lives, and they were keen for the liberation of women to continue. Do you think it was difficult for women who lost their jobs after the war? Why or why not? And what might women miss out in their lives during the war? After the war. In the 1940s and 1950s, Britain's economy was on the up, and more employment opportunities were opened up to women. However, jobs done by women were viewed as secondary to jobs done by men. It was common for women to be sacked if they got pregnant, and women were still paid less than men even if they were doing exactly the same job. Advertisements in the 1950s actually tried to encourage women to go back to being housewives. How would you feel if this was the case today? Why do you think it was considered acceptable to pay women less than men? And why do you think society tried to exclude women from the workplace? Times were changing and women no longer accepted their inequality to men. They had proved during and after the war that they were as capable as men, and they wanted this to be acknowledged. In the 1950s and 1960s, women campaigned for equal working rights, as well as pay. However, it was not until 1961 that the very first occupation paid its male and female workers the same rate. How would you feel if this was the case today? And why do you think it was considered acceptable to pay women less than men? Complete the role of women pre and post World War II activity sheet. The aim for today's lesson was for you to find out about women's wartime jobs and describe what they were in detail. The success criteria for today's lesson included the following statements. I can compare the roles of women and men before World War II. I can say what types of jobs women did during World War II. I can describe key details of women's wartime job. I can design my own propaganda poster. And I can explain how the role of women differed before, during, and after the war. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this lesson.